Welcome back to the Move podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or maybe on Facebook, you can see that we have a slightly different lineup than we always do on the Move. And we're covering a lot more races with that reason. We've got Spencer Martin, who's been joining the show. And of course, Johan will do every show in every language on the planet. You name it, he'll be there. So,
we'll see how many hours in a day we have.
Yeah, but this way we can cover a lot more racing throughout the season. So this has been a lot of fun. And today we're going to be talking E3. First time for me watching what they refer to as the baby Flanders, or the lead up to Flanders, whatever you want to call it. Very exciting race. Before we get into that, we do have Lance here with a message from one of our sponsors.
Today's show brought to you by Ventum as well. Now, this is special. You and me are back riding the same bikes.
I know, man. I'm excited.
I got the man converted. Every year I'm like, man, we spend our whole lives riding the same bike. What are we? Well, except for a couple of those years, but we don't want to talk about those. But how's it been? How's the jump to Ventum?
I love it. I did a gravel race with my son last weekend on the GS1, and what a great fun ride. I mean, it's just really handles the dirt really well. Super compliant, yet very stiff enough to where you feel the bike move when you need it to move.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about both my NS1 and my GS1. The GS1 is just you want a rocket ship of a gravel bike, don't look any further. A special offer from.
I'm excited to take. I'm excited to take that NS1 on the cobbles in Flanders, which Johan and I will talk about later.
Well, exactly. We're going to talk about right now. So we have Ventum is offering a special giveaway. So George, you're taking a crew of folks over to the Tour of Flanders. It's going to be you and Liz and Johan. You've got all the special VIP treatment that you guys always get. I don't know anything about that stuff, but you guys are going to be totally taken care of. We got a whole, I guess. From what you told me a minute ago, the damn thing sold out in like half a second. We got a waiting list, but Ventum will be there in full force. They're also giving away a nice little package here. Sign up, go over to wedo.team, click the Flanders giveaway tab. Takes 1 minute. The last day to enter is April the 2nd. Everybody who signs up everybody who signs up in the drawing for a Ventum NS1, you're also eligible for prizes from Roca, Element, Fidlock, Manscaped, Montcush, The Feed, and Huckberry. All you got to do is head on over to ventumracing.com/themove. Use the code WEDO, W-E-D. Hello, I'm the one who invented the brand. WEDU at ventumracing.com/themove. That gets you 10% off.
All right, very exciting race. We'll jump right to the ending and then kind of work backwards at how it all went down. But it's just amazing that these three riders, Pogačar, Van Aert, and Van der Poel, are just so superior to everyone at the moment. It's just unbelievable. As Johan always says, another level. They're just on another level, and they're very close. They're very close in margin day to day. So let's talk about that dramatic finish where they slugged it out like gentlemen, and get into that. Of course, Wout van Aert with the big victory.
Yeah. Well, I think once we passed the last climb, and that was with little over. I mean, the last real climb was the Quaremont cobbled climb, and so those three guys, it was clear that we're going to go to the finish. I couldn't see anything happening on the last difficulty, which was about 15-20 kilometers from the finish. So it was kind of impossible to foresee that one of those three would get away, and it would be a sprint, right? So in this case, I think the chances of Pogačar were very slim, and we all know how tight Van Aert and Van der Poel are in sprints. This time, Wout van Aert won, and I think quite dominantly. And even I have to say he was probably the least strong guy of the three. I think Pogačar and Van der Poel were a little bit stronger than him, but he won this race second year in a row. Won it last year together with his teammate Laporte, but. I think this is something that Van Aert needed. He lost against Van der Poel in the World Championships cyclocross in a sprint. he lost against Van der Poel in San Remo. And there's so much pressure on that guy. It was amazing to see. Like I don't know if you saw the image just after he passed the finish line, and he yelled into the camera, and he said, "I don't have to win. I don't." It's like I don't have to do anything, because in Belgium they said Van Aert has to win. Van Aert has to win. Van Aert has to win. And he said, "I don't have to anything." Like this big explosion of joy and a huge relief, I think, for him, especially in terms of the psychological war that's these guys have been dealing with for the last 10, 12 years in their careers. So
I never thought about that aspect of it, Johan. Just there's already the comparison of the two constantly, that sort of pressure, but I didn't think about just the Belgian pressure and the media and the people. It just, the weight on his shoulders. It's like, wow.
Well, Johan and I talked about this yesterday in our Outcomes podcast, which no one should listen to because we got it very wrong on this race. But I was asking Johan if it was reversed and Van Aert wins San Remo and Van der Poel gets third, I just think the pressure is not as intense on Van der Poel, maybe because he's Dutch and he doesn't have the Belgian media, but it just felt like a lot, like you could feel the weight of the world on Van Aert when he was following Pogačar in the Poggio. And I thought it was interesting today. I thought he was racing San Remo not to lose. And then today it felt like he didn't care if he lost the race. He was willing to lose it to win it, if that makes sense. He was the one always following, always moderating the effort. And he knew he needed to win in a sprint. And he took a risk by, not doing anything and just waiting for that sprint. And
well, I mean, I think not doing anything, it's probably also, I think he knows, and he was honest about that, that he was a bit on the limit on both the Quaremont and on the Paterberg. But he said specifically, as soon as I made it over the Quaremont, he kind of kept his pace. He knew he was going to come back anyway. But from then on, it was focused on the sprint. And he said, I've learned my lesson. Winning against Van der Poel is you can't make it a short sprint. You have to go quite early. And he went from 250 meters to go. So it's quite early. They almost started equally. I think Van Aert was just a fraction of a second, but Van der Poel came next to him, and then finally Van Aert could keep the speed, and Van der Poel had to sit up. But yeah, I mean, he lost the Tour of Flanders that way against Van der Poel, and he lost the World Championships cyclocross with a short sprint, and now finally he did a longer sprint, which was in his favor.
Well, it felt like he watched the remember that Giro d'Italia stage where Biniam Girmay beat Van der Poel with that long sprint. And it was almost same thing from Van der Poel, where it looks like he's going to have it, and then he just blows up and has to sit up. So Van der Poel definitely did it, or Van Aert did his homework there for sure.
That's interesting, you guys, because when I was watching, I was like, oh no, did he come around too early? Like he could have sat on that wheel a lot longer. And I was wondering if that's just a gentleman's kind of way of sprinting between those two in particular. I know there were three there, but instead of, coming around at the last second, they just don't like to win that way. Did you see that at all?
Well, I think it's more a result of, Van Aert having done his homework and studied. And so he lost 2 times against Van der Poel with a short sprint. He also saw that, as you said, I didn't think about the Girmay stage, but when Casper Asgreen won against Van der Poel in Tour of Flanders, it was the same thing. It was a longer sprint, and they were head to head, and all of a sudden Mathieu van der Poel had to kind of sit up. So I think it says a lot also about the qualities of Van Aert as a champion. He was definitely not the strongest one of the three, but he won. And that's also what makes a great bike rider. I mean, it's not always the strongest guy. I mean, today I think Pogačar was the strongest, but for him it was going to be difficult to win once he was away with those two other guys.
I don't know if you caught the post-race interview with Van Aert, but the host, I don't know who it was, pointed out that said, "We have a full-size couch for you this week." he says, "Yeah, that was awkward."
yeah, I know. Yeah.
And there was another funny moment with Van Aert too, when if he said something like, they're saying this is the perfect podium because of the 3 stars, and he goes, "Yeah, because I'm in the middle."
Exactly. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, let's take a step back and kind of go through what else went down and other things you guys observed. Before we do that, I just want to take a second here and tell you about some big news coming from our friends at Manscaped. Big news on 2 fronts. They have the brand new Weed Whacker 2.0. All right. That's all your below the waist needs. Above the waist, they have just come out with this, the Beard Hedger Pro Kit. All right. So if you want to take care of that beard, leave it looking nice. I'll be able to tell you a lot more about it on a future show. I believe it's showing up at my house today. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, not rocking the beard right now, but the first few seasons of the move, I did. So now having a product like this, the Beard Hedger Pro, really, really looking forward to it. Might bring it back. Might just bring it back here. And that also in that kit includes a beard shampoo and conditioner, beard oil, and beard balm to take care of moisturizing. So if you want to get this as a gift for yourself or a friend, 20% off and free shipping when you use our code. Again, 20% off. Use the code THEMOVE at manscaped.com. One more time, 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Use our code THEMOVE. All right, let's jump back in. I know we'd like to start out talking about, the big win, but let's go back a little bit and break down some other things that went down that you guys thought were really important, especially leading up to Flanders. What were some of your observations?
Well, as we said in our Outcomes podcast, the three guys who were the favorites, the 3 of them were 500 to 1, right, Spencer?
Yep, all 3 same odds.
Yeah. So I would definitely have expected that it was a bit closer at the end of the last difficulty, and that the 40 kilometers left would give the possibility for other riders to come back and then play tactically. But these guys are just so strong and so much better than the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th. That gap that they are getting basically, and it was not so much about with working together, because they weren't really working together. They were, Pogačar was trying to drop them. Van der Poel was on the wheel, and Van Aert was almost getting dropped. So, and even at that pace, they are taking 45 seconds to a minute on the next ones. Which, then afterwards, once the 3 of them were together, they said, okay, let's just go for it, because the 3 of them thought that they could win. Or at least I think Van der Poel and Van Aert thought that they were going to win, and rightfully so. So, but we saw that, with 75K to go, or with the Tijnberg, which was like the first big selection, we saw Van der Poel putting in a huge effort. And there we saw that Van Aert could follow. He was a little bit behind. He could bridge up quite easily, and the 2 of them went away. And Pogačar was a little bit delayed. He was a little bit in the back, but could make it back. And from there on, basically, it was these 3 guys, and basically everybody else was waiting to see what was going to happen. Some other guys could anticipate and get away, and everybody else was just, okay, whatever they do, we're just going to try to stay as close as possible to them. That's going to be our race. And that's what we saw. And
so, yeah, from like 80K to go to 30K to go is all these clusters of famous Flanders climbs. It became immediately apparent. I started to worry about our picks, Johan, when Van der Poel went that hard on the Tijnberg. I was thinking, I don't know, if anyone can hang with this guy. Van Aert was right on his wheel, looked really good. Did you? I started to think, oh, well, they're going to have these groups of teammates. I thought it was like Van der Poel had a teammate up the road on the Tyenberg, and he kind of blew by him at the top.
Yeah.
I was thinking, should he have slowed down? And it ended up not mattering because it was just the three guys. But it was like, does he know that that's his teammate? What's he doing right there? But
yeah,
it was just.
Well, I think he probably would have wanted that. It was Dries de Bond who went away like in between two little climbs and then went to the breakaway, which was still ahead. But he would, probably have wanted him to be 10, 15 seconds further ahead.
Yeah.
But, that can be the plan. But then if the legs don't work, then, then you have one guy, a teammate who's just not strong enough to get that extra 10 or 15 seconds. And then you have Van der Poel who's too strong and they come closer together, not at the right moment. So, but I think personally what I've seen is that, and it's like we said yesterday also, Spencer, if you really want to break the strength of Jumbo-Visma in numbers, the big guys have to go early. And that's what Van der Poel did. He went early. And then on top of that, Jumbo-Visma had the bad luck that Van Baarle was involved in a crash. But you know what? Van Baarle was not up front anyway. So it was basically going to be a man against man, which in the case of Van der Poel and Pogačar works out the best, because imagine that Van Aert has 2 or 3 teammates left, then they're prisoners, and then the teammate of Van Aert is going to win.
Yeah.
Why don't you, for those 3 guys that are on the podium, can you kind of compare their team support today? Obviously, Jumbo being the better of the 3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, today, the way it worked out, it was, Van Aert had one teammate, which was Nathan van Hooijdonk, who, anticipated after the time back, I think. Van der Poel had Søren Kragh Andersen, who we all knew that he was in great shape since Milan-San Remo. He was with Van Hooijdonk. And Pogačar had nobody, but he had a Slovenian, not a teammate, but that was Matej Mohoric, who was up front. But in the end, it didn't really matter, because these guys, once we got the 6 guys went to the Tyenberg, and there it was, I've actually never seen something like this, like a small group going to the Tyenberg, which is normally the last climb in the Tour of Flanders. But even there, you had a battle for position between these 3 first ones. You had Pogačar and Van der Poel and Van Aert, and they were battling for position on who was going to be the first guy to take the Tyenberg, and it turned out to be Pogačar finally who went first and basically did a repeat of what he did last year in the Tour of Flanders. And that's what always amazes me so much. Like with these guys, they're so good that they basically think, okay, I did this last year, so I'm going to do this again. I mean, and normally in cycling, it doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. You have to find the ideal circumstances to do a repeat of what you've done. But these guys, it's like they're so strong that they just do it. And so that's why I say I think we're going to see a repeat again next Sunday. I mean, not this Sunday, coming Sunday in Flanders.
Well, JB, to your question, I was wondering the same thing during the race. Like, oh, Pogačar is isolated here. Van der Poel as a teammate, Van Aert as a teammate. This could be really tough for him. And then over the course of one climb, he just neutralized the whole advantage and made it a man-on-man race. Johan, I'm a little curious on your thoughts on, he was really putting pressure on, I assume, Van der Poel, but you could see it on Van Aert. Van Aert was tailing off a little bit. I started live betting Van Aert when I saw him getting distance, because I was thinking, well, his odds are going to, the market's going to move against him. You're going to get a good price on him. But also I was thinking, well, what's Pogačar's plan here? So let's say he slams it up and over these climbs. He has to do it. He has to try something. He clearly can't get rid of Van der Poel. What if they go over one of those climbs with like a 6-second gap on Van Aert? Like, what would they have done? Would he really have worked with Van der Poel to pull him to the line, or would it all have come back together anyway? Like, was Van Aert not in as big of trouble as it looked like?
Well, if they would have gotten like a 6 to 10 second gap, I think the guy who would have gone full gas would have been Van der Poel together with Pogačar. And Pogačar, would be, I mean, it would be in his interest to work also. Well, I mean, yeah, yes and no, because he could have potentially a better chance if Van der Poel and Van Aert are together.
So they're looking at each other when he's attacking later.
Yeah,
like he almost needed Van Aert to be there,
but there was no terrain left. You know, it's not like Pogačar was going to drop Van der Poel and Van Aert on the last climb on the Tegenberg, which is, you know, normal pavement and not very steep. So, you know, I mean, I think it was telling to you know, we could see the difference in strength, but doesn't mean that Van Aert won't be stronger next Sunday. You know, I mean, in a week, times a lot can change. Now Van Aert does, if I'm correctly, he does race Gent-Wevelgem this Sunday. Van der Poel and Pogačar are not racing, so it's just a question of how are they going to bridge the gap now towards the next weekend. But those are the three guys we're going to see again there. And at the end, you know, it doesn't really matter so much how strong their team is in terms of tactics in the final, because they go so fast that none of their teammates can be there. The only way that they can have a teammate in the final if they have a teammate up front. Other than that, you know, and that's in Pogačar's case, for example, it's great to know, because as long as he has teammates around him to bring him in good position, then he's fine. Because I mean, specifically today on the Quaremont, on the old Quaremont, I mean, that's a long climb. I mean, for Flanders, right? I mean, he started going as soon as he hit the first cobblestone. He started going, and you know, the first part is steep, and then you get to the church, and then it's like another kilometer falls flat. You know, it's quite long. This guy just is fearless. You know, he just goes, and it was only Mathieu van der Poel who could follow, like last year, same thing.
It's a little crazy. I mean, it wasn't even really a good course for him. I mean, Flanders is a much better race for him than this. This really wasn't hard enough. As we saw, he couldn't get rid of anyone. Have you, in both you and JB, have you guys ever seen this before, where like a Tour de France contender while still contending for the Tour de France is mixing it up with elite cobbled classic riders? I don't know if I've ever seen this since I've been watching cycling. There
is one rider in history who has won this race, and afterwards in the same year, the Tour de France.
I heard it on television today, so let's let Spencer guess.
It's it's got to be. You mean, I guess Eddie Merckx would be my guess.
Eddie Merckx never won this race.
Wow. So what
a disappointment his career was.
Would it be like Bernardino or something? That I can't believe Eddie Merckx won this race. I'm shocked.
More recent
than Bernardino. So would it be? Is it? Oh wait, what? Who would this be? More recent than, you know, is it Greg LeMond?
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Your time is up. It's Geraint Thomas.
Oh my God! Yes, yeah, because he won this in 2015.
Geraint. Yeah. Well, I mean, he won this race and the Tour, not in the same year.
Yeah, not in the same year.
Yeah,
and he was a fundamentally he has kind of an interesting career that maybe I haven't fully digested, but. Yeah, he was a classics rider, and then he just transitioned into a Tour de France rider pretty quickly, which I forget about.
Yeah.
Well, let's dig deeper on what Spencer's brought up here, because, you know, Pogačar has to face these two guys every one of these classics, and you know, the goal should be July, right?
It's not. You know, that's the thing, JB. Pogačar's goal is, I mean, of course, he wants to win the Tour, but his big goal is to win the Tour of Flanders.
Wow.
He said already in an interview in Belgium that, you know, he would prefer to win the Tour of Flanders than the Tour de France this year, which is, you know.
That's just so different from the mindset we have all always had.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's the big change, you know, that's the big change. And the thing is, he can do both. That's amazing. Like, Pogačar is here rivaling with these two superstars, the strongest guys in the world, Van der Poel and Van Aert, since forever. He comes into this, without doing any of those preparation races. He comes into this, he's the strongest one. But then come July, and he's the big favorite for the Tour. And there, of course, Wout van Aert and Van der Poel, they have other functions, but they would never be able to rival with Pogačar in a Grand Tour. That's what makes him so special. That's crazy.
Yeah, he can do what they do best. They can't even come close to doing what he does best. Johan, coming out of this race, do you think he should feel confident about Flanders? Like where do you think this performance should put him?
I think he does feel super confident. Last year also was the first time he was trying out those races. So I think he did do the E3 and was up there in the second or the third group. But this year, I mean, obviously now he understands the racing. It's amazing to see because, after only 2 years of racing these races, it's impossible to know off by heart all these climbs and the way you go, especially the way you go to these climbs. Yes, he did recon, but it's not the same. Doing 1 or 2 recons, I mean, you can know the course, but if you don't know how to race it, and even there, Pogačar makes no mistakes. He's up there and he's strong, and the only time he was not there was on the Tijmenberg when Van der Poel went, but on the other climbs he was the guy, forcing the race. So I think he's super confident for next week. And again, it's one of those riders that it doesn't really matter. I mean, he's the favorite for everybody, including for Van der Poel and Van Aert. Pogačar will be the favorite, and the guy just doesn't care. He just goes whenever he needs to go on the front and just pushes. And I mean, it's I think it's unique, to see a guy who is so good in stage races, so good in long climbs, to have that kind of power to rival with these whatever you call them, animals. That's quite something.
If you were his director for this race, would you have tweaked his strategy at all? Like, do you think he just rode the perfect race and didn't work out, or do you think there's anything he could have done today to try to get one over on those two guys?
I think personally that, for Pogačar or for the team UAE, it's not that important if he wins this race or not today. It's all in function of coming Sunday, and there I think it's easier. I mean, easier. It should be in theory more favorable for him to 260 kilometers or 267 kilometers. I don't know exactly. So 60 kilometers longer than today. And the Quaremont and the Patersberg a lot closer to the finish. I would feel pretty good about my chances, as long as they can keep him safe and in good position and there's no bad luck involved. He's going to be there.
Wow. Who was the biggest loser today, team-wise? We're used to seeing Soudal Quick-Step and all over things in the spring. Mm-hmm. That's the normal.
Well, already last year we saw that was not the case. In the spring campaign, they were still called, what they called last year, the Koenig Quick-Step. No, I mean, I'm still not used to these name changes. Let's just call them Quick-Step. Yeah, Quick-Step. Yep. Or the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack. I think the Wolfpack is transforming into a Wolfpack around Remco for those kind of races. And then in the classics today, they were nowhere. They were nowhere in the spring, in the opening weekend in Belgium. So at some point we saw Asgreen there, we saw Lampard there, and we saw Ballerini, but they could never really put their stamp on the race. And then the one that normally should be there or is supposed to be their leader for these races now is Alaphilippe. I mean, I didn't see nothing of him. I don't know if he had an accident or flat or something, but that, I mean, it is concerning to see that, that they are today, their first rider is around 20th position or something, or, I mean, of course, if you don't make the first split, then it doesn't really matter anymore. But it's telling that this is a team that's transforming, and I mean, obviously Remco is doing great with the team around him, and I think that logically they will focus more and more on building that team stronger and stronger, and they'll have to forget a little bit about because it's also not like if the team of Patrick Lefevere would do one big transfer for the classics, it's not like they're all of a sudden going to change. I think they lost their strength in depth of the team, which was always their strong point, and now that's the other teams are stronger.
Yeah, they've been losing talent and then also not replacing it. It's like not a good place to be. I just wonder. So you look at this chase group, pretty interesting. They were probably never going to catch. The first three were rotating strong enough that it wasn't really a question of if they're going to get caught. But Mathieu Jorgensen, American, finishes fourth. Great ride, kind of ripped off a strong chase group. His teammate, Ivan Garcia Cortina, gets fifth. Stefan Kung sixth. Matej Moderich seventh. Valentin Mandouas eighth. Soren Krauw Anderson ninth. Like, are those riders like in the past that would have been on Quick Step? It just doesn't feel like they're recruiting new classics talent and they're just letting their core age out.
Yeah, but I mean, listen, there's a budget issue. They have a good budget, Quick Step, but they don't have the biggest budget. And so, Jumbo has a good budget. Obviously, Kragh Andersen didn't change teams to Alpecin for free. They also paid him a lot of money, and you have to make choices. So it's always it becomes a problem when you have a big star who you have to even in the case of Patrick Lefevere, even if Remco Evenepoel has a long-term contract, he still needs to fight to keep him, because there's candidates trying to come with huge offers to say, hey, we'll pay you so much for so many years, and then even if there's a contract in place, you kind of have to obviously not match it, because that's why the guy signed already a multi-year contract, but you have to keep them happy. If let's say, I don't know, I mean, let's say Remco Evenepoel, whatever, I mean, I don't know, but let's say his contract is 2 million, right? And all of a sudden Ineos comes and they say, well, we want Remco, we're going to pay him 5 million for 5 years. I mean, that's like huge. So as a team manager, you have to make a decision and say, okay, Remco can't go anywhere because he has a signed contract, but I want him to be happy, or at least I want him to see that I'm making an effort. So then maybe you have to pay him 3, not 5, but 3, even if he already has signed for 2 million. So obviously that's going to impact Patrick Lefevere on the other side of the other team to be able to recruit if you have a limited budget. So, these are things that we have to keep in mind, that it's not always so easy. It's easy to say, they should get this guy, they should get this guy. At the end, it's a market, and guys like Søren Kragh Andersen or Van Baarle or Tish Benoot, I mean, they're in demand, and these guys obviously are going to go also where they feel good on the sports side, but also where the money's right. And I think in that case that Patrick Lefevere has a disadvantage. And it's always the same. If you have a big superstar who eats up a big chunk of your budget, then you're limited to build a strong team around them.
Did you struggle with that at Postal with your Grand Tour team and then the Classics team around George?
Well, we did because, we were, especially because our main focus was the Tour always. And so we tried to recruit as strong possible a team for that. And then, hopefully some of those guys could also be good in the Classics, and it was still possible then. But now I feel like it's getting so specific, Grand Tour teams and Classics teams, it's like two different teams. And so you have to get separate budgets for both of those teams. And back in the days, it was different. You could there was some riders who, when George was the leader for the Classics, but he was also, one of the fixed guys. I mean, one of the most reliable guys for the Tour. And nowadays, that's not the case. I mean, if you see the team around Remco Evenepoel right now in Tour of Catalonia, I mean, none of those guys would race these kind of races that we're commenting today.
And what's going on with Casper Asgreen? Like, he won this race in 2021 and then won Flanders. I thought was kind of like the next coming star, maybe behind Van Aert and Van der Poel. And then today he finishes, 7.5 minutes back. Like, is there injuries going on there, or is it just kind of his career stagnated a little bit?
I mean, I don't know exactly what's going on with him. I mean, to me, he seems, I mean, he's still a very strong rider. Last year he had a lot of problems with injuries, and he had that bad crash. If I'm not mistaken, if it was in Romandy or the Tour of Switzerland, I don't remember. But then he struggled. He struggled in the spring, and he struggled in later on in the season, and obviously he has not come back to his level he was 2 years ago. And nowadays, everything evolves so quickly. Like, if you're 1 year on a lower level, it's like, okay, there's 3 or 4 new guys already here. They took your place, and you're done.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah, these guys fighting for contracts, fighting to keep their jobs. They go from being, the young star to the old guy, like, overnight.
Yeah.
Which is I was thinking about it just a minute ago, like, more reason to go get the money when you can, when you're young and strong, because these careers are likely ending earlier too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a lot of life left after bike racing.
We're seeing this more and more, and I think that's also one of the things that a guy like Pogačar, it's not a bad idea, if he really wants to win those races. I mean, the sooner he wins Flanders, the better, because, I mean, listen, he won the Tour in 2020, he won it in 2021, and now we'll see. I mean, if he still wins another Tour, right? I mean, wow. I think it's possible, definitely possible, because he's on a great level, but nothing is guaranteed. I mean, how many big stars have we seen who won a big race and they say, "Oh, it's going to be the first of many"? And
Bernal comes to mind.
Bernal. I mean,
yeah.
Jan Ullrich, for example. I mean, and then we were not talking about really young talent coming, but he won the first Tour at a very young age, and he said, "Oh, going to win 4 or 5." He won 1.
Yeah.
So in top level sports, you really have to get the benefits when they're there, because tomorrow's never guaranteed, right?
Right. Not only the age thing, just the staying healthy. No accidents, no injuries. It's very risky. Yeah, go get it while you can. Do either of you have a little bit of this is very indulgent for our American audience. Do you have a crystal ball of what the future holds for Mathieu Jorgensen, who looked very good today, just off, just behind those top 3 guys,
Spencer, you want to go first?
Yeah, I was blown away by this. I mean, obviously, like, 4th, that's like internationally probably not moving the needle, but if you really kind of break down that ride that he was able to rip away from a really strong chase group, imagine things really fall apart in that front group. He could have played a role in a podium place. Mm-hmm. And then this is on top of winning. It's also not a major race, but Tour of Oman, he won the GC. It's like, this guy can do anything. Like, I'm kind of blown away with just the width of races that he can show up to and just get results at. And I think a big knock I have on Americans a lot of times is they can be, I don't want to be like disrespectful, but like fragile characters a little bit. Like, if something goes wrong, I feel like American riders can really tailspin, or it's just, they're not always just game for all types of conditions. And Jorgensen just shows up to a Spanish team. Like, I assume he's speaking Spanish inside that team, and he seems just to be able to thrive in any type of environment. It's really impressive.
To come back on your thought there about Americans, not being able to deal when things.
Oh, this is going to get good. Everybody, pull up some popcorn here. Here we go.
I think Jorgensen is amazingly mature for his age. Compared to some really big American talents that I personally had on the team, who were, right out weirdos. Real weirdos. Like, if I think back now, I said this guy and this guy. These guys were unbelievably weirdos. It's like, I think that has changed a lot also. Mathieu Jorgensen is right now he's becoming a really confirmed value in pro cycling, and he's going to be one of the best riders in Movistar. For sure.
He might be is outside of Enric Mas. Is he their best rider? Is he their second best rider now? I think so too.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Because, he's good in stage races. He can climb. He can time trial decently. And now being able to do these races. And then also I listened to his interview afterwards. This guy knows what he wants. He says he wants to, check out how far he can go in these kind of races. It's not just that he was in that group behind those three guys. He had already been up front before. He was trying to anticipate and was on his own. And if you see these kind of efforts you're doing, and then to being able to recover from that and still stay with some of the good guys and be able to ride away in the end, that takes a lot of quality. I'm really, really impressed with him today. The future's looking bright for him.
And he was racing for the win. He probably went off the front knowing I cannot hang with Van der Poel, Van Aert, Pogačar on these climbs. I have to get a buffer.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's telling me like he immediately kind of understands where he stands and what he has to do to win. I think he could win. I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I could see him winning a race like Tour Flanders at some point in his career.
That's still another game, but
he's probably the best as far as Americans go. He's probably the most likely candidate to win a major classic.
Yeah. For the moment, for sure. We had Nielsen Paulus winning San Sebastian a couple of years ago.
That's true. Yeah, maybe cobbled classic. Nielsen Paulus, another rider.
It's not the same kind of stuff, but
he's riding well too now.
This guy can win San Sebastian too.
Yes. Yeah. I almost worry that he's so versatile. What does he focus on? Is it too many like rotating plates? Like, is he just going to be able to like dial in on one thing, or maybe it doesn't matter? Maybe he can just race all types of races all the time.
Things have changed so much, Spencer. If you see Pogačar, is there. And I think we're going to see this more and more. The guys don't race. They don't race a lot. So then that brings me to the next point, whether for Pogačar is too early or not, but anyway, to come back on Jorgensen, I really like what I'm seeing. Already last year in Paris-Nice, he showed some really good things. This year starts off with, a win in Oman, did a really good Paris-Nice also, like really well in Paris-Nice, just behind the first three big guys, and now to be able to be there in these kind of races, I think we're going to see that more and more. Guys who are, nowadays it's unbelievable to see a guy like Pogačar, a guy like Jorgensen, being up there in these kind of races where before you were supposed to have done it 4 or 5 times. You needed the experience. To know the course, to know when to go fast, to know when to rest in between the climbs. These guys just go. Whenever it's uphill and hard and cobbled, they go.
Remember when they used to say you had to be heavy to ride on the cobblestones? This is like just 5 years ago. And it's like, oh no, actually, if you're fast, you're probably fast on any type of surface.
Right. That's an interesting point with the changes in technology and tire choice. Maybe the smaller guys are floating over it a little more than they used to.
We all know that the tire pressure they're riding with the bigger tires is a lot less. I don't know if that has an impact on lighter guys compared to heavier guys. I mean, for Paris-Roubaix, I would say a light guy is never going to be able to make it, because there you have to have the proper weight on the bike to have the grip. But for these kind of races, I mean, Flanders is a combination of cobbles, but the hardest part of Flanders is the climbing. A guy like Philippe Pogana, for example, decides not to do Flanders because he thinks it's too hard for him in terms of climbing. It's all short climbs, but the consecutive climbing of short climbs, it makes it really hard too. So, I mean, who would have thought? A guy like who's considered the specialist in big stage races like Pogačar will be the big favorite in Tour of Flanders. I mean, if you asked me that question 5 years ago, I said no way.
Do you think Pogačar can't win Roubaix because he's too light?
I have to pay attention to what I say, because
you never rule that guy out.
No, if you look at the cobbled stage in the Tour de France last year, he was flying. He was the best of the whole bunch, basically. But I think a guy like Pogačar would normally he would not do Paris-Roubaix, because that's really, really taking too much risk in terms of crashes that can really, have a big impact and have serious injury. Because it's flat and you go so much faster, and when you crash on those cobblestones, the injuries could be a lot worse than in Flanders. Not that Flanders is not dangerous, but in Flanders it's more, you get into a crash because there's like too much traffic and you have to kind of, it's not the same.
And JV, it's funny you mentioned that. Someone floated that theory to me last night, and there was another person there, and they were a pro cyclist and they shot it down. I think you're onto something though. I do wonder if the bigger tires and the new technology is helping riders kind of float over the cobblestones more. It's not as much of a blunt force interaction with your wheels in the cobblestones.
Yeah, I just think about those high pressure 23s.
Yeah, 110 PSI.
Right. It was like rock on rock.
But you would never do that for Flanders anyway. Even before you were not riding 23s, you were riding 25s with less pressure, but of course not the same low pressure as Paris-Roubaix. But I think you may have a point. I mean, obviously technology evolves, and it's proven now that riding 28s or 30 millimeter tires, or even 32 sometimes, they are as efficient and a lot more comfortable.
Well, let me take this opportunity to mention this about Flanders again. Johan will be there with George and some of our listeners, fans who are doing a VIP experience. That's going to be very cool. Do you know where you're going to be on the course?
Well, we're going to be at the start, at the finish, and then we're going to go to 5 or 6 different viewing points. So it's up to us to decide. But it's going to be amazing. It's going to be an amazing day.
And you can go to wedo.team and sign up for a Flanders giveaway. I don't know why you would not do this. You could win of course, a brand new Ventum, which we are all fans of. Roca is part of the package. Element, Montcush, Manscaped, Fidlock, and more is a big prize package. So
and the Ventum, that's the new model and the complete bike, right, JB?
It's a complete bike. Yeah, I believe it's the new GS1 they just released.
Yeah,
I think Lance just got his new GS1. So it was already an amazing the GS1, the previous version. So I don't know what all the tweaks were, but it must be amazing. So go sign up. Okay, wedo.team, sign up for the Flanders giveaway. We are going to be back on Sunday to talk Catalunya. And if you haven't. And we've got. There's that too. But I don't want to do a spoiler if anyone's been banking on Catalunya and want to catch up this weekend. But Roglic,
what a race!
What a show. What a show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. And then, I know you guys do outcomes where you do the deeper dive, but my sense is that we're going to see a similar finish to Flanders. Your thoughts real quick?
Yeah, in my opinion, yeah. I mean, these three guys are the big favorites. Flanders is longer, so there are more tactics involved. And so it's just a matter of how far ahead are some of the teammates of these big favorites, because I cannot imagine Jumbo-Visma not having a guy up front and Alpecin, the Koenig, not having a guy up front. Even UAE, Pogačar should have somebody up front also. But, when in the heat of the action, it's these three and the rest. There's this.
And I think you kind of said it earlier. You touched on it because it is longer. That can play as a favor for Pogačar.
Yeah, it's longer, so harder, and the places where he can make the difference. Where today he was the strongest on the Quaremont and the Paterberg, are so much closer to the finish. I think what is it? It's like 12 kilometers from the Paterberg to the finish.
Yeah, and it's condensed. Correct me if I'm wrong. The new course, it's Quaremont, Paterberg. They kind of do the loop, and it's like a brutal little loop. I mean, it could if we had the same conditions, same riders today, I don't think anyone's sticking with Pogačar on those climbs. That's not to say though that there is a strong correlation between winning E3 and winning Flanders. And not to say Van Aert doesn't get better over the course of 9 days. 9 days is a long time in terms of fitness.
And even if he doesn't get better, but he, if he gets dropped a little bit and come back, he could still win. He proved it today. But on Sunday, that's going to be more difficult.
Yeah, just because that distance it's really like it goes by in a flash of an eye when you crest the Paterberg and then get to the finish line.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll be back this on Sunday, as we just mentioned, to cover a couple of those races, and then Flanders right around the corner. Thank you very much, Johan and Spencer. If you want to ask questions on the Sunday show, for example, you can shoot those to me at themove@wedo.team. All right, themove@wedo.team. Fire away with your questions. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, guys.
Bye.